this story on the BBC homepage the other day. Can you see that there? Yes. And it said, second Reform contender defects to Tories over racist, bigoted candidates. She was called Georgie David, and Reform said Georgie David can never have met the vast majority of the party's candidates. I mean, she must have been a bloody busy woman if she had, right? Given the vast number that there are. She must have been all over the country, and she clearly wasn't. So this story was a nonsense. I think that this woman, as a paper candidate, so a paper candidate just means it was a no-hoper. She never stood any chance of actually winning the seat. Some have argued that she may well have links to the Conservative Party. So this, call me a conspiracy theorist, but maybe this was planned along the way. And then I said, this is the top story. So look at this here. This is the section on the BBC's website where they reserve it for their biggest story. It's the bold as brass on the front page of one of the most visited websites in the whole of the United Kingdom. And I said, top story on the BBC News website, top story. She was a last-minute paper candidate, planted there to stir for the opposition. The BBC pin it as their top story, and this wretched public service broadcaster that we're forced to fund through the licence fee, and Reform, by the way, are the only party committed to actually getting rid of said licence fee. I wonder why the BBC don't like them so much, so vehemently. I said, they're not public service, they're a public menace. And I said, this is clearly part of a BBC strategy against Reform. Now, before I bring you in to comment on that story, the Channel 4 report that was out earlier, so I would put Channel 4 in the same category as the leftists within the BBC. And Channel 4 had this segment, undercover segment, with this guy Andrew Parker, who was exposed as an actor who does rough speaking, whatever that means. He puts on a rough, gruff accent and pretends to be salt of the earth, working class or whatever else. Now, there's an organisation, Cockney Light, yeah. There's an organisation that has been formed called Ofcom Watch. Now, Ofcom is the regulator that regulates both the BBC sometimes, because the BBC actually self-regulates, but that's a different discussion, and Channel 4, GB News, you name it, the BBC. If you're on telly, the Ofcom regulate you. And this campaign is a scrutiny campaign against Ofcom and their bias. And they've instructed a senior barrister to actually lead an independent inquiry into what they deem election interference or alleged election interference by Channel 4 and their undercover report of Reform's campaign. Now, it was revealed, as I say, Andrew Parker was an actor by profession, and they're saying they're going to have a thorough and forensic investigation into whether or not he was paid to make these remarks, because it was produced in association with a company called Lee Sorrell Media. Now, Ofcom Watch say that this could have been an attempt to thwart any retrospective audit trails linked to the actor by not doing it through Channel 4 themselves. And they want to know what the communications were that took place between Channel 4, Lee Sorrell Media, and Andrew Parker. Now, if the inquiry finds anything untoward, the channel could be in big trouble for getting involved and meddling in an election. But the reason I put these two stories together is because it doesn't take Cluedo to be able to put together the dots here and suggest that, call me Agatha Christie, but I'm able to make some links here that there is a concerted media effort, MSM effort, to actually undermine the Reform campaign because they're doing so damn bloody well. Without any money, without any infrastructure, they're doing well. And the media's saying, I'm going to get you. We don't agree with you. We don't like you. Us in our liberal metropolitan bubble, we're going to get you. Chloe, am I being insane? Am I being mad?
No, I don't think you're being insane. I think that the way that the media has tried to spin every little crumb that they can find to try and throw reform under the bus has shown clear as day, without doubt, that they are out to get them, and they do not like the fact that they are doing so well with so much less money than the Conservatives and Labour. I mean, we've looked earlier at the social media engagement of the different parties, and Reform are absolutely killing it. Reform have only spent 26 grand on their social media,
Yeah, yeah, incredible.
whereas the Tories and Labour have both spent about 1 million each. So they're absolutely killing it. And the fact that that story, some paper candidate who no one's ever heard of, who's not even saying Nigel Farage or anyone at the top of the party is a racist. She's just talking about other candidates. The fact that that is pinned to the top of the BBC page, I'm sorry, but unless it was a really slow news day, I doubt that was the biggest story of the day. And then,
Mm-mm.
the Russia stuff. I mean, they just
Oh
take
yeah.
one little thing, which really, he was just giving a little bit of context to what happened in Ukraine and why it happened. He wasn't saying that we're all responsible, it's all the West. He's just explaining how we, poked the bear, as he said. And the media have spun it like mad. He's working for the Kremlin and all of this bullshit. I mean, it's just ridiculous, really. But it's not working because, because we have social media now, they can't completely control the narrative. It will make it an uphill battle for Reform, don't get me wrong, but they can't control everything anymore.
And Alex, they tried this in 2016. I was accused of being in cahoots with the bloody Russians. I've never
Yeah.
been to Russia. I don't know. I can't think of any Russians that I know off the top of my head. I mean, the whole thing is an absurdity. It's sheer desperation, is it not?
Yeah, I've been making this point on Twitter for the last couple of weeks, and Chloe nailed it. A man that's trying to. What happens to us being particularly allowed to critique and use and be analytical and critical thinking about our own actions? What is so wrong about Nigel Farage going? We should evaluate our own actions if we want to have peace at some point in time. There's nothing wrong with that in respect to what he said about Ukraine. And he also called out Putin. So to go around and the politicians and the prime minister and all these other people afterwards go around calling a Putin sympathizer, despite the fact he clearly said in the interview he doesn't back Putin at all and thinks he's a mad dictator. It was really baffling to me to see that.
Uh,
But to go back to the point on this media collusion, it's so transparent. It's really transparent, and it plays into the hands of the Uni Party at every single angle. In fact, it's the one thing that both Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak have agreed on in this entire election is reform and trashing
mm.
reform as a
Oh
party,
yeah.
trashing reform candidates. What does that tell you? The Daily Mail produced a fake headline on the Zelensky stuff. That's one thing people aren't talking about. That headline wasn't the BBC source, by the way, was where that headline came from. Zelensky, I can't because you pull it up. Someone pull it up because I think it's important people see this. This
Yeah.
so-called Daily Mail headline that said Zelensky said something about Farage being a Putin sympathizer or something along those lines is completely made up. This has actually come from a BBC source, this original quote, and the original quote didn't contain Nigel Farage's name in it. That's a real problem with the Daily Mail printing a quote that contains someone's name that was never there in the original quote. So, what they've done, and it was so clear because this is when Reform had just crossed the threshold and was starting to destroy the Conservative Party in the polls. I think it was 2 weeks into Farage becoming party leader and momentum was building. And then the hit piece after hit piece came out. There we go, is infected with virus of Putin. That is a made up quote. Go and research it yourselves. But the BBC source who found this quote, this is why the BBC didn't run with this story, by the way. The main broadcaster in this country didn't run this story because they couldn't corroborate the source. That is really important information most British people aren't aware of.
Yeah, and I think it's worth it pointing out that just yesterday we found out that NATO have said that they wouldn't accept Ukraine because Ukraine is too corrupt. Now, I have no idea whether or not Ukraine is or isn't corrupt. I can't say I know much about it, like most British people, I should surmise. But we have a right to know where our money's going and what it's going on, surely, right? I don't think it's
we have
nuts
a
or
right to know we have a right to know what country we might be going into war with. Like we
Or
really
for,
do.
yeah.
This is really important. A ton of US military bases in Europe were put on high alert the other day. This is the White House's the Pentagon's official website. We are potentially gearing up for a full head-on war with Russia. It's not. This is serious stuff. And so for Farage to be taken down so quickly and the establishment to go, any critique of our actions, any thoughts around what we may have done to push the buttons should be seen as traitorism, essentially. As being seen as a traitor. That's what they're trying to paint him as, and it's rubbish.
Have you got what it takes to be a reasoned presenter? Well, send us a short clip of yourself to join@reasoned.uk, and we might be seeing you on this very channel very soon indeed.